Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to introduce our next presenter, Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran, bronze medal recipient, former U.S. Army captain, now Walmart executive. Please welcome to the stage, TRACEY LLOYD.
This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire. She's walking on fire. This girl is on fire.
All right, I cannot believe they sandwiched me between a dynamic speaker such as Cheryl and lunch. So I'm not going to take up much of you all's time. First, I want to thank JCI for allowing me the opportunity to share my story with such a dynamic, awesome group of young ladies. So give yourself a round of applause. Before I begin speaking, I just want to level set on a few things, okay? So we're all starting from the same page. I believe that each and every one of us, all right, all of us, are born leaders. It's whether or not we decide or build up the courage to nurture and develop that inner leader is a deciding factor whether you'll be perceived as a leader or a follower. So there was a great teacher, a late teacher by the name of Dr. Miles Monroe, a phenomenal guy. Dr. Miles Monroe believed that people who are considered unlikely leaders or reluctant leaders, right, that there's two things that happen in their lives that will push them to take on that leadership role or to recognize that, hey, I am a leader. One of those sources being circumstances and pressure. So maybe it was a crisis in someone's life or just a certain challenge that they were faced with, right? They rise to the challenge. The second source is intentional training and development. So, leadership grows out of opportunity, exposure, like this great conference that you're here today. That type of training, that was a nice plug for JCI, by the way. People are able to develop their leadership skills. So, my ability to be an effective leader today, I believe, came from both sources, right? So it was through life challenges as well as my formal training. So I'm going to share my personal story with you all. Hope everyone stays awake. And from my story, I hope that you all will gain some inspiration. And I'll be honest, this is kind of tough. I'm burying myself in a room full of strangers, and I do have my team here, so thanks for the support team. But I think that there's some things in my story that can help you all as you take on, the world. So I'll begin with right from the beginning. So I was raised in a normal two-family, upper middle class family up to the age of 8. When I turned 8, my mother went through deep depression and she was taken away from us. And so my father was left to raise my 10-year-old sister. My younger brother was 2, and of course I was 8. And I tell you, my father worked tirelessly to provide for us, to make sure that we had food in our mouths and somewhere for us to lay our head, whether it was a home, a hotel, or a car, He did the best that he could for us. And so it was quite different, or I would say it was quite an adjustment living in the suburbs and taking field trips to the inner city. Or, I can recall my father taking us into the inner city and say, hey, if you don't get good grades and you drop out of school, you're going to end up homeless. And he'd point to that homeless person. Or if you do drugs, this is what you're going to end up like. And he points to, a crack addict, and we're locking doors like, oh my God, where are we? And so from going to this place where we're taught these lessons to now living, being a permanent resident in the inner city, it was quite an adjustment for an 8-year-old. But it was through those experiences that I was forced to mature far quicker than my peers. And I truly believe that leadership accelerates under pressure. So that's where it began. I can recall being in elementary school, and I had this teacher named Madame Sheridan. So Madame Sheridan, in all honesty, realistically, she's probably 5'4". But when I was so young, you couldn't tell me she was like 7 feet tall. And she had this long hair that, went past her knees, and she had this really long pointer finger. And I recall this day, I was acting up in class, and she goes, "Tracy, will you just behave?" And I'm like, the whole class was out of control, and you're pointing, you're calling me out. And she goes, "Tracy, when you misbehave, the class misbehaves." And I remember thinking like, whoa, lady, this is a lot of pressure you're putting on me. I'm just, I'm a kid. Don't put your inability to control the class on me. That's way too much pressure. And I said, wait, what if there's something to this? And so, of course, I started testing it out, and I would do things, and I would watch other kids mimic me, and I'm like, whoa, they're following me. And it was at that moment that first time I felt the burden of leadership. And I thought, whoa, this is a lot of pressure. I'm in elementary school, so when kids act up, somehow it's my fault. And what if I have a bad day? Don't I deserve to have a bad day and get away with it? And I understood that that I had to. I guess I realized the power of influence, right? And that I had to behave a certain way because I didn't want other people following in the wrong footsteps. And so I understood at a very young age the weight that leadership carries. I recall another defining moment in my adolescent years. One day I overheard my aunt and my grandmother. My father, when he would work really late, he would drop us off by my aunt's house. And this particular day, my aunt and my grandmother were having a discussion about our circumstance. And, they were saying, my father's name is Bobby. And they go, why is Bobby putting himself through this? He's going to kill himself. Why don't he just separate the family? I can take Tracy, such and such can take this. They were just dividing us up. And I'm listening to this like, they're going to separate, my family. And, they go on to say that, if, he can't raise 2 young girls, they need a mother influence, and that we'd end up pregnant or dropped out of school or on drugs. And I just couldn't believe it because these are 2 people that I just loved. And so what they thought of me meant so much. And my father came to pick us up, and I just started sobbing in a car. So he pulls over, and he goes, "Tracy, what's going on?" So I began to tell him the story that, I overheard the conversation with my aunt and my grandmother. And he goes, "Tracy, who cares what those old bats think?" And I'm like, yeah, who cares what those old bats think? and that was a crucial moment for me, because it was at that point that I understood the power of releasing yourself from the opinions of others. And I learned that at a very early age, because that was someone who meant so much to me. It's my aunt and my grandmother. And I learned that it doesn't matter what people say or think, right? You have so much control in your life and your destiny, and you can't let the opinions of others put you in a box and limit yourself. So that was a great lesson that I learned at a fairly young age. So I'm going to fast forward to the 6th grade. I lived in Milwaukee, and we had a group of students from Marquette University come to our school, and they were talking about college and, how if you get these great degrees, you could earn, you could have a lucrative career. And so I could not wait to get home. So I ran home that day, and I go, Dad, I figured out how we don't have to be poor anymore. And he goes, okay, like interested, like this should be good. And excuse me. And so he hears me out, and the look on his face is telling me that, okay, this is not the best plan. And he goes, "Tracy, well, that all sounds great, but college costs money." And I'm like, so, excuse me, so if I don't have money to go to school, I can't make money, so I can't change my current circumstance. And I thought that was so unfair. So you mean we'll always have to be poor and we can never be better? And he goes, "Well, that's not true. There's this thing called scholarships." And I'm like, "What are scholarships?" Please forgive me. And so there's water here. Can you guys forgive me just for a second? All right, the juice of champions. Okay. So, he starts telling me about scholarships. And he goes, Tracy, if you play every sport you can play, and if you get every A you can get, schools will pay you to attend their college. And I go, oh, that's all I got to do? So I kid you not, I joined the basketball team the very next day. Always got great, good grades. I was an A-B student, but I was just so focused. I had to get an A. Literally from that point through high school, if I got a B, I cried like I had an F, and the other kids were like, oh, you're such a nerd. And I'm like, you don't understand. This B could be the deciding factor in whether I get into school or not, get college, to be able to pay for college. So every A meant so much to me. And that kind of set my chart. So from then on, even through high school, by my junior year, I was the captain of the track team, the captain of the tennis team, the captain of the basketball team. I was student council president, my senior year class president. Everything I could do. I had a 3.8 GPA. Like, I was focused. Never had a time, a curfew, because I was always at home studying, or either literally right around the corner shooting hoops. If it was 2 o'clock in the morning, my father knew to just go around to the park, grab me, and bring me home. And so that was my path, and I had my eyes set on, senior year, I had my eyes set on West Point. I said, I am going to go to West Point. I am going to, be an officer in the Army, and I'm just going to lead this great nation. And so that's what that was all in my mind. And I remember going to my counselor. I was attending Marquette Upper Bound. So although I was getting practically straight A's in school, the education was, it was solid. It wasn't great, but it was solid. So I supplemented my education by attending Marquette Upper Bound, pre-college program. And so my counselor there, he goes, Tracy, you're really bright. He said, but I don't think you'll be a good fit at West Point. He said, and it's highly competitive, and don't even waste your time, applying to West Point. And I was thinking like, whoa. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's highly competitive get in. In the state of Wisconsin, only 2 people get in a year. And I'm thinking, okay, that's 2 chances for me. And he goes, well, you have to understand that, parents that are important, and then he fixes it and goes, well, of influence and power, those are the kids that get into West Point. And your father's a mechanic. And I'm like, well, he's one heck of a mechanic. Does that count for anything? And so I remember hearing that voice, right? Free yourself from the opinion of others. Tracy, don't listen to this guy. Do it. And I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? I get a rejection letter, but at least I know I tried. And so I, listened to what he had to say. I said, okay, thanks for the advice. And I went on ahead and I applied to West Point. So long story short, I got into West Point. I was so scared. I was just like, where am I? Folks screaming at me. I've got to march a certain way. Everyone is marching this way, and when we turn, I go this way, when everyone else is going that way. And I just didn't feel like a great fit. Everyone was so refined. We sat down and we were served dinner. People came to wash my clothes. I was just not used to this lifestyle. And there was a butler at West Point. He had been there for years, and he literally took me under his wings. He taught me proper etiquette in terms of, when you're seating, when you're eating, how do you eat, how do you, the way you sit, the proper posture, proper protocols in different events. He even taught me how to ballroom dance. And so I remember, so in my class, each class, there's about 1,000 of us come in at a time. And there were literally, out of 1,000, maybe 30 of us were females in that class. But we were like a tight, mighty group of 30. Like, we were like, we're going to give these guys, we're going to take it to them, and we're going to, be a force to reckon with. And I used to remember just hearing negative things like, Tracy, you don't deserve to be here. You stand out. People know that you're not cut from this cloth. What are you doing? You're an imposter. And I used to constantly have to shut that negative talk. And I said, I deserve to be here. Like, I didn't have a life. All I did was school, sports, because I wanted to be here, so I deserved to be here. And I took on that attitude, and I was voted class vice president my freshman year. And that was a huge stake, because women don't get leadership positions normally, at that school. And in the first, or the most difficult part of being a class vice president, and no one told me about this when I was running, was that you had to brief a one-star general on a monthly basis. Oh my God. But it was preparation, right? It was preparation, and it paid its dividends, and there were many things, that I learned from that. So I'm gonna fast forward to my junior year at West Point. It was September 11th, and I was on my way from taking my engineering, so I was leaving the engineering building, and on my way to Spanish class. And at West Point, if your teacher doesn't show up in 15 minutes, you get the rest of the class off. And so everyone's so sleep deprived at West Point. To get a class off, it's like, yes, I could get some sleep. And so I think she was maybe like 13 minutes, she shows up, because we're counting down like, yes, 2 more minutes and we get to leave. And she comes in, and we're like, oh, seriously? Like, you just had to show up, teacher? It's 2 minutes left. We thought we were going to get the hour off. And she's looking at us, and she's like, do you guys not know what's going on? And we're like, what do you mean? And she turns on the TV, CNN News, and as she turns it on, the second tower was being hit. Now, for you all that may not know, West Point is in New York. It's right there on the Hudson. So when you look up the river, you could literally see all the smoke going up. And at the school, many of the children, parents worked in the Pentagon, also the World Trade Center. And it was just, that day was just so eerie for myself. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm 21, but I better hurry up and grow up. I better quickly learn my craft, because when I graduate next year, I'm going to be leading our sons and daughters in war. And so I grew up quickly. I felt, it was that day I felt like the world was writing on me. It was etching itself in me again, and it was saying, okay, Tracy, here's the next challenge. Get ready. And I took it up. And I became very serious, very focused, really worked on refining my leadership style. And I had that opportunity. I had that opportunity in 2007, April 2007. I led my team into Baghdad, part of the surge. Literally saw President Bush on the TV talking about the surge, went to work that Monday, and we had orders going into, Iraq. And I'm like, whoa, this is real. And I was IT, I was part of support, and so we had to go ahead of everyone. And that was really scary. So I'm like, so you guys are sending, the colonel, the majors, the captains, you guys are staying back here. You're sending this little lieutenant ahead to get everything set up so that when you all come, our missions can begin. So I was given 2 weeks to go into Baghdad and completely set up the communications infrastructure so that our teams, the brigade, about 3,500 people, could then come and communicate. So I was IT, so we had to lay all the lines, the communications. We also had the attack helicopter, so we had to be able to communicate air to air, ground to ground. And to come and to set that entire infrastructure up in 2 weeks, that was pushing it. So my team and I, we had about 2 months to prepare. When I tell you, we would go to the field and we would just roll out and we would just mock setting up an entire infrastructure. And to be able to do that in 2 weeks, we were thinking, how is this going to be possible? But we kept training. And so we felt comfortable by the time it was time for us to deploy that we could do it. We felt very confident. And once we got there, not even 30 minutes, ladies, that we hit ground, we were attacked. And I was thinking, oh my God. I remember going to my tent that night and I cried. I'll be honest, I cried. And I said, I'm gonna get my team killed. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not built for this, I'm just this little poor girl from Milwaukee who dad's a farmer, who grew up as a farmer, now is a mechanic. Who am I to be in this position? Who am I to be able to be leading this team? And I heard a voice, right? And it said, Tracy, all that, everything that you've gone through in life has prepared you for this moment. So you're ready, you can do this, and Bible verses, greater is he that is in me than is in the world. I'm more than a conqueror. I just, started reaffirming myself. And so I remember grabbing my gun, putting my gear back on, and, went out to the tent with my teams and said, guys, we've got to figure this out. Mind you, when we went to our area, they didn't even build up our command post. So I didn't even have electricity. So I was already behind the 8 ball of getting this infrastructure up in 2 weeks. It was already a tight timeline, but now I've got to decrease that because now somehow I've got to put on a project manager hat and figure out how we're going to get our building built so that I can get electricity, so that I can set up the infrastructure. And at night, I grabbed my team together. We figured out our approach. And we made it happen. And, through God's strength and blessings, we were able to finish 2 days ahead of time with the whole project that we didn't think we could do in 2 weeks. And it was, it was amazing. My team, we did outstanding in amazing things. And from that time that I was in the war, there were 3 vital things or lessons that really stood out. Preparation is everything. The importance of investing in your team, and then also failure is not an option, so figure it out. And I think that if you start from that premise, whenever you're faced with a challenging task, just start from the premise of failure is not an option, so figure it out. And it's amazing what you can come up with. Ladies, I just want to take the time to thank you all for hearing my story. And if you don't take anything else from what I shared from you all today, remember, when God created you, he created a designer original, right? So why waste your time being a knockoff of someone else when there's such greatness already in you? So take the time and develop that. So whether, it's life challenges or through formal training, welcome it, nourish it, and watch it grow. Thank you for your time.